Hi there, this is Shauna from the Foil Fox, and I have a project today, and it's using two of some very recent dies by My Favorite Things. One of them is the Big Birthday, and the other is the Stitch Blooms. Here are two that I did, and I'm going to be demonstrating the gray one today. So some of the supplies I'm using is a frame die that cuts a panel, then the Stitch Blooms by My Favorite Things, the Big Birthday by My Favorite Things, and then a stencil by Catherine Pooler that's called Marching Leaves, and then a few distress stains. So I'm going to start out with a panel. This one is alpaca. It is a heavy cardstock, and it has a really beautiful gray with just a hint of lavender to it. So I'm going to apply some anti-static powder because I'm going to be embossing, and I'm taking the stencil and I'm applying Versamark ink all over the stencil. And once that's all done, that I get all the ink on there, then I'm going to turn it over and put the ink side down onto the panel, arrange it where I want it, and then I'm going to run it through my Big Shot machine just as if I'm going to cut a die. So if you haven't used this technique, it's really handy. It not only embosses, but it also applies the Versamark ink all at the same time. So I'm taking some Hero Art Sparkle embossing powder, tapping off, then covering it all, and then tapping off the excess. And it leaves behind this really nice design. So I'm using a very hot heat gun, and I want to make sure that it's quite hot when I'm doing a large surface like this because I want it to melt very quickly so that it doesn't scorch the paper. And make sure that everything gets melted so you don't have some areas that kind of rub off. That's what will happen if you don't emboss every bit of it. That dry embossing powder just kind of disappears on you. And then I'm going to use that frame die. This one happens to be from Whimsy Stamp, the hand-stitched rectangles, but you can use any of your favorite. Then I took a piece of hot press watercolor paper and I cut out all of those stitched blooms. So you notice I didn't cut any of those flowers and leaves apart. I left them just all together because I knew that if I would use all the flowers, or at least most of them, and if I had any left over, I can always use them for another project. So with using a Art Impressions acrylic palette, I am just adding a little bits of distress stain. It doesn't take much, and in some cases I put too much out there, like right there. That happens to be scattered straw, believe it or not. And I'm just adding little bits of the distress stain. I don't know if you know this, but the distress stains in the dauber top have been discontinued. We still have some on our website that are still available, but the same formula, actually the very same thing, is available in the spray bottle. So as we deplete our inventory of the dauber top, then we replace them with the stains in the spray. And you can get the dauber, if you love the dauber top, you can buy some dauber top bottles separately. So to get back to doing these flowers and leaves, I just first applied some clear water onto the flower, like I'm doing right now, and then I'm adding just a little bit of that distress stain. The first flower I did was using worn lipstick and picked raspberry. Now I'm using the same, but I'm being much paler, and so I'm using just the worn lipstick, a little bit of the dried marigold, and a tiny bit of the picked raspberry. Then for these littler flowers, I'm using some yellows. This is scattered straw, and I'm going to add a little bit of the squeezed lemonade because this yellow was quite pale, so I wanted it to be a little bit brighter, and it turns out that the squeezed lemonade was a little bit brighter. And then I'm adding some of that dried marigold in the center. You know that in watercolors they always dry back a little bit lighter, so don't be afraid to use a little bit of color. You can use any watercolors you'd like. On this one I happen to use the distress stains, but you can use any watercolors you have on hand. On the other example, which you'll see again a little bit later, I use Daniel Smith paints. So I've painted all of the flowers, and then if you'd notice there's little circles which are the center of the flowers. I painted them. I wasn't, again, being very precise, just knew that if I use coordinating colors that they'll all come out in the end. So with these leaves, I'm using forest moss, a little bit of the mowed lawn, and there's a blue, and I'm not sure quite which one of the blues that I use, but I do like to add a little bit of blue to my greenery. So I'm going to go back and just add a little bit more of the darker color of the green to everything here, just to give it a little more prominent color. And again, knowing that it's gonna, when it dries, it's going to be a little bit lighter. And once these are all painted, I'm going to set them aside to dry, and then I'll go on to the other parts of the card. So here, using a piece of Nina 110-pound cardstock, I have a piece, it's actually 5 1/4 by 3 1/8, and I'm marking the center point of the height there. It's because I want to create points to each end, so I'll actually create an elongated hexagon. But for right now, I'm just marking those, make little marks, and then I'm going to take the Big Birthday die, center it, and I'm going to run it through the Big Shot machine and cut those letters out. But then before I do that, I'm going to mark 5/8 of an inch in from each of the ends here, and that's going to give me those points so that I can connect the center with each one of those marks that I made on the outside. And then I'm going to then just cut those, and that's going to create a really nice shape. There are dies that do this. I didn't happen to have one on hand, so this is so quick and easy anyway that I just takes a minute to do this. And once I cut this, then I'm going to punch out all of the letters that were cut out. And I just love when I start punching these out that it reveals this happy birthday. It's kind of a fun thing. And the nice thing too is you have some happy birthday cutouts that you can use for another project. I'm going to erase those little marks if there's any remaining. So I marked them very lightly. And then I applied some foam tape to the back of the happy birthday, just enough to support it throughout. And then I'm adding some double stick tape to the back of the panel that we had prepared before. And I'm going to apply it to a white cardstock card base that's folded on the top. So now that that's good and stuck down, I'm going to pull off all the release tape on the back of this happy birthday, which is going to just pop it up a little bit. And I'm going to apply it to the top of this card. I'm going to center it. So you can see it's all starting to come together. And then on the flowers, I added a little bit of foam tape on the back of each of the flowers. And then on the leaves, I'm just going to add some tape runner. I'm using this micro tape runner for the centers too. You could pop those up if you wanted to. In this case, I didn't. I just wanted to put them in the center. Each flower will be popped up already. And then the leaves I'll add by using the micro runner. So now I'm going to just arrange these. It's much like arranging in a vase. That's what it reminds me of. It's just trying to decide just where you want your flowers. And just that little bit of greenery. So now that I've got an idea where I want them, I'm peeling off the release tape. Adding the little micro runner to the leaves because I want those kind of in the background, so I don't want to pop those up. And this is a pretty quick card that is just so cheery that I think, and it's a fun one to make. And just apply these very last leaves, and then we'll be all done. So here are these two again. This one, you can see the first one is in the blue background. I used the striped stencil, and then the one we just created. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. And don't forget, pop over to our blog. We have lots of other projects and inspiration, and there's also a complete supply list there. Thanks so much. See you next time. Bye.